Hello, how are we doing today? Hopefully everyone's doing wonderful. We're here today to talk about our contact application and look at adding the ability to generate thumbnails. Sounds like wicked fun. It's actually pretty easy to do. This is just a good introduction to using queues locally and Azure Functions to do some generation. So let's take a look. We left our contact application, go back out of source, where we were able to save applications, save contacts to data store, and then allow people to upload images to the app. So if we go to coding with JoeG, got that. Wait a second for it to start up because it hasn't started in a while. That's when you use shared resources, it kind of shuts it down. And then let me just clear the cookies because there is a bug in the app that does it. So now that they are clear, if I click contacts, after the login happened, they should get some. I'm going to go and edit old 21 because that's when we keep changing. Oh, it's taking you so long. Oh, I hope I didn't break the application. I did some Azure cleanup the other day, but maybe I killed it. So if we click edit, you get a long URL. I'm going to just go and upload one. I think I removed the permissions. Huh. At least I'm pretty sure I removed the permissions. Let me go to the portal and re-add that. I was playing around with the blog post the other day, and after I was done with the blog post, I went and removed a bunch of permissions, and I think I removed the wrong one. So this is the repository we want. Let's go to access control, coding with JoeG, contacts web. Oh, that's contributor. Wonder why it failed. Huh. So it wasn't the permissions. What else did I do? Make a mental note. Validate the app works before you actually use it, Joe. Pretty sure I didn't change anything. Was playing around with the Azure app configuration, but I didn't do it. I didn't touch this application. It's not that I remember. Let's see if App Insights has anything to tell me. If not, we will just turn into development mode and see what the issue is. Here's an error. Failed request. What was the failure? Post. No reference. Oh, silly. No, it's just a user error. I hit the upload button. I have to actually hit browse. I gotta choose a file to physically upload. Well, at least we know we have another bug in the app that I have to fix. Let's go to pictures. Where's my pictures of me folder? There it is. Let's say I upload this terrible picture here. Once I click upload, we have this gigantic picture that shows. But what if I want to just do something a lot smaller, like maybe just a head or something? So kind of shrink the image. That's what we're going to work on today. So let's go and do that. I should clean my glasses. They're kind of foggy. So there's two different ways we can do this. The first way would be, when we're looking at the upload piece, which is if we go here in the UI and the upload piece, which is in controllers, contact controller, we then have an upload. This is actually too much code inside of the controller. We should probably create our own little business layer here for this, but we can do that at another time. What we're going to want to do is here we can do the image manipulation, which, take the image and shrink it down in size, but then save that off to somewhere. So there's two different ways we can do that. We can do that all right here in this code base, meaning let's go get the file extension, send the upload, change the name, actually save it to the blob, and then save it to the database. And then like right here, after we do this, we can then take it and create the thumbnail. If we were to do this here, what's going to end up happening is when you're uploading, not only are we uploading the file, but then we're saving it off to Azure Storage, saving it off to the database. Then we're going to do some image manipulation, and that's doing a lot of extra stuff. And you want it to come back to the user as quick as possible, especially since creating the thumbnail is not as important. So we're going to offload this task to a background process. So we're going to send it off to a queue and let the queue take care of it. So the queue would just say, hey, I got something for you to do. Then we're going to need something that's going to read that queue and take the data from the queue and do something with it. So let's go and get the queuing stuff in here. So luckily, there is a feature inside, or not necessarily a feature, but a function inside of the storage helper library that we've used in this project that has queues. So I think I can just do one queue because we're not going to use any other queues. So let's just do a queue underscore queue. I really hate spelling that word. It's so challenging for me for some reason. Okay, and then here you need to create a message for the queue because queue needs something to work with. We can either create a fully qualified message or something that the Azure function that's going to be reading this says, okay, I can work with that. For the meantime, we only need really the ID number 21, and then we can kind of pull out that data from the database and or the blob, or we can give it the ID number and the container name and the fully qualified file to it, and then the queue/function should do it. So we need at minimum the contact ID. Then we need the contact image URL, I think we called it. Or just image URL. It's right above you, Joe. Look. And then from there, we can pretty much do anything. The other thing is if it's already in Blob storage, we don't need the full URL. We really want the container name and then the file name. So we need at least the contact ID and then this or this. The ideal solution would be the contact ID with these two things, because then we can take that image and process it. But if we had something like we did originally, which is just URLs, like paste in your URLs, we still need a way to take that URL and process it. So we're going to want to take both of those for both sets of that data. So let's go and create a message. So in the models folder, what I would typically do is add a new, where's my directory, and call this messages, because we're going to share this across the board with both the Azure functions as well as the data and everything. And then let's add a new one. So we're going to add a new class here and call it image to converge. And you can add message to it at the end if you want. I typically don't because it's already in the messages class. Let's add you. Now we're going to do a public int and contact ID. Now, right now, this is very specific to our implementation, meaning the contact. You might, later on, we might be able to just take this and make this a generic converter. And then we want public. Actually, in the code we have right now, we just want the container name and string because this only happens on the upload. So we don't need this. Later on, we might create one for this. So container name. And then file name. String container name. Like string. Image name. That should be it. Now we have to inject that into the application. So let's get our startup here. And we're going to need to do something similar to this, but with queues. So let's go and add to our app settings. Let's call this thumbnail queue name. thumbnail, create. Oops, I spelled thumbnail right. Comment there. And then we need the URL for it. So thumbnail. Thumbnail. Q storage account. I think that's all I need. And then we're just going to do this locally. And then we will make the changes for production. So if we make settings changes, we need to go and add to the settings class and copy those out so I don't have to misspell them. Sometimes I think to myself that the copy and paste is not worth the effort. But it's more so for the spelling of the names and to try to make things a little bit easier. But I'm pretty sure copy and pasting code leads to the most bugs. Outside bad requirements, of course. Ooh, what do I have? 0 to Hero Dev. Thanks for the follow. The actual first time I've been live on a stream in, I don't know, 2 months where someone's followed. Thank you. If you don't mind, put it in the chat how you found out about me, so you know. Let's go here and change this to public string. Public string. And I don't know why I did it here because I wanted to do it in the API part. Oh well. We don't really need it in this part. Good thing is I can copy and paste. Wait, no, I need it. Yeah, I don't need the API, I need it here. Sorry, I was looking at the API from it. I need it right here. So let's copy and paste this out. The creation, luckily, is pretty much the same thing. Only differences are this is called Q. This is called Q. This calling Q thumbnail Q name. Thumbnail Q name. Oh, not Q name. Storage account. Thumbnail Q storage account. Now I put these separately on purpose just in case you have a different account for Blob storage and a different account for queues. I mean, ideally right now they're the same, so I could just use those equally. And then this requires a queue name, if I remember correctly. Yep, a queue name. So this would be thumbnail queue name, and then thumbnail queue name. So at that point, we're able to inject a new queue into our services. Register thumbnail, create queue. The reason why there's two here is because if we are in development, I want to use the local account. So that means I can do everything here and I don't have to go back and forth to Azure. If not, if we're in prod, I want you to log in and use the local credentials. So we're going to assign the permissions and everything in it. That should be it. We should be all wired up to queues. We just actually have to send a queue message. So sending a queue message is relatively easy. You first need to create an instance of the queue message. So create var thumbnail create message equals new models dot domain models dot messages dot image convert, and let's just use the constructor creation. We want the contact ID, which should be contact ID equals contact ID. You want the container name equal to, what's the variable name here? Settings dot container name. And then last, we want the image name. So image name equals, what do we call it? File name. File name. Now we created the message, we need to queue it up. So it's actually pretty easy to queue up a message. I'm going to await this. Queue equals, queue dot add message async. And this just wants a message type. So I don't think I have to do this. I don't remember. I should probably go look, but I think I just do async and then do thumbnail, create message, and that should be it. And that fires off a message for it. You can get the send receipt if you want. I guess I'll do that so we can see what it was. And we can put a breakpoint here to watch it. So, recap, create a message, send the message. Now what this is going to do is, once we get to our Azure Explorer, take a look at our storage accounts, look at the storage emulator. It's not showing anything right now because I don't have the queue created, so we got to go create the queue. So how do I go and do that via Rider? There's no open here. I hit refresh, so that's going to change things. Give it a second. I don't know why it's not showing locally. Huh. Guess that means I have to run the Azure Storage Explorer. I don't even know if I have that installed. Azure Storage. No, I don't even have it installed. Huh. I was using everything in Rider. Let's see if Insiders has it. I know it has an Azurite plugin. Doing Control-Shift-P. Azurite. Those should all be oh, they're in a separate service, so I don't know if I can view them. Let's see if I can view them. Wait for the storage to load. In the meantime, I'm going to go off to a different screen and download it. Azure Storage Explorer. It's a good thing I didn't have anything secret open in there. I was trying to avoid having the Storage Explorer on my machine. Not that I have anything against it. I was like to try to keep everything in one IDE. So while that's loading and Azure is loading forever, go back to Writer and see if there's something I'm missing. Nothing on the bottom. It's in the services. There it is. Azure Storage emulator, or at least it sees that. Says it hasn't started yet. It's because I already have an Azure instance open. And the Writer toolkit probably only knows the local ones. So check here. Match storage, local emulator, queues. There should be no queues there, so let's go and add a queue. And what do we call it? Thumbnail. Thumbnail, something or other. Settings, let's close use and I'll pop you open. I want you. There you go. Thumbnail create. I tend to name these like I do with like the storage queues. I want the names to mean something, especially when you have a lot of them out there. So now I should have a queue eventually. There it is, thumbnail create. So now I should be able to add them. Let's go check the refresh here. And see. Oh, the queues aren't there. Oh, I'll figure that out another time. So now we have the thumbnail create. If I send a message, we should be able to see it. I'm going to go run the Storage Explorer on another window so it's running in the background. And by other window, I meant it's going to appear right in the center of the screen. Yes, I agree to everything. Install. Okay, that's installing. Now let's run the code, make sure I have the breakpoint where I wanted it. Yep. So let's start up the API. API should be started in a second. First time's always rough for it. Ignore all the yellows, that's because I installed .NET Core 5 or .NET 5 Preview 8, which is in preview mode and Writer doesn't support it yet. Okay, that started on the other screen. Let's go and start the web UI in debug mode. I will pull that back here in a second. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. I do notice when I stream, I end up touching my face a lot. To me, when I'm sitting at my desk computer, I'm usually like this. It's just comfortable for me. When I'm presenting a talk or conference, I'm usually standing, so I'm not propped up like this standing. And this appeared on the other screen, so let's bring it down. Okay, this is the test one, so let's close these so we don't clear the cookies because of that bug that I have that one day I will fix. Cleared, I'm going to click contacts. Wait for this to happen. In the meantime, Azure Storage Explorer wants to load, so let that load. And we will see. Why is this logging so slow? Might have to go and update the libraries. I think we're 3 versions behind in the preview, so something else might be a little broken. While that's still loading, don't want to add an Azure account. Attach to local emulator. Start that. Play, that's all good. Connection summary, connect. Then we should see that, and it should have 2 of the queues in there. It's just taking so long. There a bug? Oh. Hey, got another message behind that had nothing to do with it. What do we say? Connection string cannot be null or empty. Storage connection string. Oh. Why did you not work? Let's see what is changed locally. So this, yes, I know, I'm stopping you. Oh, there is no storage connection string in there. Did I put that in the app settings? Let me go and check that. There. Let's go here. Might be in the secrets. So let me, where are you? Tools. Open project user secrets. And I just had that on screen, so I am going to have to block that out. Storage blob account name is blank. Why is that blank? That should not be blank. Guess when I migrated everything, oh, see, it should be pulling from here. Oh, because it's overriding with the user secrets. So let's go and put that there. Now if I run it, it should be good. So let's get you to pop back up. And I think we want that one. Already cleared the cookies, so that should be good. If I click on this, we should be good. Yes. So now if I click edit on me, let's go and upload a new picture. Click browse, and let's do one of my son holding my daughter when we first brought her home from the hospital. Click upload. And we get a Ooh, specify container. Oh, I didn't create the containers. My bad. My bad. I have the local host and everything's in Docker, so when I run it, I have to kind of recreate all that. So let's go back to the storage emulator, and we see containers, and there's no containers. So let's go and create a block container. For the contact images, let's make sure the queue is there. The queue is there. We should be good to go. And I'm going to just hit play, let that resume. It's going to show an exception, but that's fine. We'll go and just re-upload that piece. So let's go back one page to the edit, browse, click that picture, click open, upload. So the image was uploaded. If we go to the Storage Explorer, we should see contact images. Once I hit refresh, where's the refresh button on here? There's the 21, which should be that picture. Now, if we look at the queues, we have a message. If we look at the message text, it says contact ID 21, container name equals contact images, image name equals 21 JPEG. So we have everything we need to start processing this message. It says, okay, here's something for you to do. You notice how quickly it came back, outside of us debugging. But it's ready for us to do something with it. And we can tell by looking at the send receipt also. This always comes back with the value. The thing you're looking for is message ID and the potential insertion date and time. By default, it does 7 days out. I don't know if you can override that or not, but with my library, you cannot. So that is it for that. So we click play. The good thing about it is now the user doesn't need to know or doesn't care. So the thumbnail could be created in the background. So at some point, some other process can come later on today, tomorrow, at some point in time, go through and generate that. So let's go and take a look at the thumbnails. So there's two different ways we can do the thumbnails now. What I mean by two different ways is really for the storage. We can create a separate container inside of here and call it like contact dash images dash thumbnails, and then just assume that we have the same file name there, for displaying purposes. Or we can update the database to have a pointer to wherever we end up storing those thumbnails. I'm kind of siding towards just making the assumption, and then we can go back and add a database table to it. So let's create a new container called contact dash images dash thumbnails, and that would have a list of all the thumbnails that we have. Now let's see, how do we add them? Well, now we got to create the job that actually runs all these things, or at least gets the latest message off the queue. So we need a new project for that. So let's stop all these. Shift F5, stop all. And let's create a new project. So I like to create a separate folder for the Azure functions. You can do with it as you wish. I just think it's a little bit easier for management. You can also do them in separate repositories altogether, but since we're going to be working on this a lot, I figured it's easier to just keep them all together. So let's do new solution folder and call them Azure Functions. And then we're going to add a new project. And then we are going to look for Azure Functions, which is at the top of the list. It requires Azure core functions to be installed. I already did that already. Okay. Latest available version. Oh, yes, I didn't. Thought I had it on here. I apologize. There's a library you need, essentially a couple of NuGet packages and an npm package. It runs a node server locally on your machine for debugging and trying it out, and Writer will execute that for you. Same thing with Visual Studio. So it's just downloading that toolkit so that it's available for it to do everything it needs to run. I have to keep expanding it. There it goes. I was like, this thing doesn't end. Once it's done and extracting, this will get populated and then we'll be good to go. In the meantime, while that is going, I am going to take a quick look for what libraries to use to create the thumbnail. Image, thumbnail, .NET Core. I think the current popular one is FMPEG, but I think that's pretty heavy for what we want to do here. I think we want to use the system.drawing.core for it. Go to Stack Overflow, there's hundreds of posts on it. The one I did originally many moons ago used system.drawing.core or system.drawing, but I don't know if that is the new standard anymore, since there's so many new libraries out there. There's a newer pre-release. No, I don't want the pre-release version. Probably going to install this at some point, but I'll have to figure out how to use it. Let's see if Writer is done. Installation, now it's done. Save. See if nope, let's reload. Oh, it's smart enough to know that it's there. Azure Functions, company.function. Don't like that. Let's do context dot functions dot what are we going to call it? Thumbnail creator. Sounds fancy when you say click create. Now you might be asking yourself, what's a function? Good question. I want to know what a function is too. Functions are small snippets, so to speak, of code that run and do one job and one job only typically. So in this case, think of it as like a method. You're just going to call this one method when something happens, use something with it. So a great example is creating a thumbnail. We have an image that's posted. I get a message of a new image. I'm going to go do something with that image and send it off. Another good example, some of the uses I use it for the CodeCamp site. When I want to send an email to 15,000 people from my web UI, I don't sit there and click send. It goes through each of the 15,000 emails, creates a new email, sends it out, creates a new email, sends it out. I send a message off saying, hey, I want to send out this message to everyone. And there's a background process that runs as a service that just constantly goes, checks, oh, you want to send a new message, let me do that. Then something that generates the message, then something that actually physically does the sending. So you start compartmentalizing or microservicing your functions so that you can scale up and down each individual service. When I first really started building out the Desert Code Camp site, I was sending 1 or 2 or 3,000 emails at a time. You know, hey, we got this new session, or we're looking for sponsors, etc. And I would have to set the timeout on the server to be 10 minutes because it would take that long for the web page to come back. Then I discovered queues, and I'm like, oh, this is a piece of cake. So now the server does everything. Granted, there's a lot more functions behind it, and what I mean by functions, Azure functions, but essentially I took a larger collection of methods and just broke them down into smaller pieces. A good benefit is you have the ability to go and update those or increase them. If you notice that you have a bunch of servers that are taxed, you can move off these little pieces to other servers. So let's take a look at our function. So we have 3 files in it: the get ignore, which uses the default. Oh, that's new. Never seen that before. Found but not excluded directly later. But that's your typical get ignore file. And then hosts, this kind of tells us what version of the operating system and anything that we want to inject into it. And then the local settings. In this particular case, for the Azure functions, it's saying that for the web jobs, we want to use the development storage equals true, which is our storage account connection. And the reason why it needs to know that is because the Azure web functions are stored in Blob container. So it just stores it as a typical C# file and whatever other dependencies it has, it creates it there. And then the functions worker runtime is .NET. You can run them in F#, I believe, PHP, and a slew of other languages. Now we need to create a function. So you notice my add is a little bit different here. So if we look at the types, well, that's way too. Hey, come on, go back to add. There we go. We have timer trigger, HTTP trigger, blob trigger, queue trigger, service trigger, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. These triggers are ways to start or execute the function. So, in a normal application, you have the submain that says, as soon as someone clicks on this executable, run this chunk of code. On a web server, you have the web request. Once a web request comes in, it says, trigger this job or start this page. Well, in the Azure function world, there's nothing to say start it. So these are different ways to start it. So the most top four are probably the timer, HTTP, and blob. Timer, you can use a cron style scheduling to say start this every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, hour, what have you. HTTP trigger says whenever I get a call to this URL, do something about it. So you can think of this as like a post to an API call. Blob trigger says when I have certain things going into a blob, deleting a blob, I want you to do something about it. So we could have changed this to say, hey, when something is added to that contact's images, automatically trigger this event instead of adding the queue message. Queue message says, hey, whenever there's a new message in the queue, I want you to do something. And then the service bus queue and topics are very similar, just in service bus, which is for high performance. Cosmos DB trigger, think of these as like SQL Server triggers or functions. You can do things on add, delete, update to records, automatically fire off the function. Event Hub and Event Grid are similar as IoT Hub. These are just ways of getting data in. And durable functions orchestration, it's a little too advanced for right now, and I won't cover it. So let's get out of view, Windows Escape. So we are going to add a queue trigger. Let's give it a name. Create thumbnail image. Yes, I'm going to add these all to Git. So by default, it's going to want to know what the trigger is and what the name of the queue is. So here it's already saying it can't resolve the name because I didn't give it yet, and my queue doesn't exist. So we should have, I call it thumbnail.create. And then the connection is the connection string that you want to use. By default, it uses something called Easy Web Jobs, which is what you saw there, but we actually have that settings name hard-coded. So for now, we're just going to use development storage equals true, and then that should work. Once it sees a message, it will fire off and log this. Now here it automatically, a lot of these things are figured out. So you got this little bracket here which says this is a queue trigger, so it's an attribute for this method. It's going to give it my queue item as a string, because by default all messages pasted in a queue are a string, and you can actually verify that by looking at the Storage Explorer. You can do this. There's just the message text. Even though we wrote out a JSON object, it just pretty much wrote the string. So I will get a message saying C# queue trigger function processed, and then that whole JSON string. It also supports serialization and deserialization. So if I add a reference here to the project, which is domain, I should be able to change this to domain.models.messages.image to convert. Let's just rename this to image to convert. And now it'll just deserialize that string into this text, and then here it just writes it out, so I can do image.contact ID. So as soon as I hit play on this, it should be smart enough to go out, get that message, and then display the contents of the message. Once I do that, it's gone. That message is gone because it's once someone reads it kind of queue, it's gone. So as soon as I read, meaning pull that message off the queue, it's going to be gone. So for the sake of sanity, I'm going to just copy this message text because we're just going to keep adding it back. So we're doing some testing. And I pasted that into another window. So let's hit the little debug here. So that's this little icon right here. And then I am going to debug it. In this window, you're going to see another window pop up after it's done executing the build that says Azure Functions. And then it's going to kind of show a bunch of stuff. Yes. Yes. And this is it pretty much starting the runtime. And let's see, I got some red in there. So let's see what the red says. Azure Web Jobs, error indexing, create thumbnail, image, Microsoft storage account, use development storage. Should I spell it wrong? I might want the account name. I don't think I spelled it wrong. Oh, maybe it's not connection. Stop this for a second. Yeah, what's the connection? What is the connection? That is weird. Weird. Is the service not running? You can see here the web job host got created. Why can't I see the queues? Not the queues. I know that there was a issue with the queues in one build. I wonder if it got temporarily taken out. So let's make sure we can see it here. You can see it here now. It shows in the Azure Storage Explorer, so I know it's there. Let's just check my connection string. Got the wrong account. Could be that. I don't need that long version. You just pretty much just need this account name, but let's just put that there for now to make sure it works. Interesting. Why is that not working? Let's check the storage variable. Where are you? Here. Azure function trigger. If you don't have the connection, it automatically assumes that it's using the Azure web jobs, which you really don't want to add. Oh, it just wants the setting name. Duh. So let me pull that out. And that should be what do we call it? We called it that. Oh, but that's not. I need to do this inside of this. And I can take this one, or I can take that one because that's a default. But to be consistent, let's just do this. Then if I come to, where are you? That one. Change this to that. It should work. Hit play. You could ignore this blue squiggly line right now. It's because I don't have any awaitable functions. So that looks better. No blues. There it goes. Nope. Cool. So it worked and it got connections. We got some issues with it. So let's go and kind of walk through what this says for us. Then we'll probably fix that one issue and call it a stream. So here it's kind of building up the node package. So this is the actual Node.js running. If you read a whole command line, it's essentially building out the Node.js package and giving it a function which has a create thumbnail image and whatever logging we added to it. Doing a bunch of setup, saying that we've configured it for .NET. We can skip out the other languages. This is a writer configuration, and then we're starting up the Azure Storage extension. Because it's a queue, it wants that extension in there. And then it's reading the file, pretty much just sets up all the different NuGet packages with it, some timers, and then it actually starts. So it's executing the create thumbnail image. The reason for it is there was a new queue message detected, and this is the message ID B078. If we look at here, this should be that message ID. No, why is it? Oh, in the wrong spot. Use thumbnail create. That's probably gone now. But you did notice that a poison message happened. That's gone now. But the message here has a new message for it. It tried 5 times. Because it failed on all 5 times, it went and said, I don't know what to do. I'm going to put this in the quote unquote poison queue. You can figure it out. So this allows you to go back, and that's what it says here. Message has reached the max DQ count of 5, meaning it was 5 attempts. It has now put it in the poison queue. So let's go take a look at the message. Execute, create thumbnail, image failed, system.private core exception while executing function, web job host, finding image to convert. The input was not a valid base 64 string as it contains non-base 64 more than 2 padding characters or an illegal. Okay, that's rude. Let the string look good. Did I format it differently? Message text looks all right. What did I do? Let's go take a look at let's go look at the actual storage library and see what the sample has for it. Open. Oh, it's not the storage library. I have a different library that I've been using the package for called my event presentation. Go use source. But there are functions in here. I thought there were functions in here. Oh, those functions might not be on this computer yet. Boy, gotta do a get. Let's open up in a new window. Pull down the latest version, and we can take a look at the code and see what the sample is. Wait for the load to finish, and then we can do a pull. I change the master. Change the name of master. Oh, probably call that main. Changes would overwritten by merge. What changes do I have? Notes. Let's go and undo that. Now let's go back and pull the latest. The local changes. Pull main. And I think that is good now. It doesn't look like it's good. Missing a bunch of stuff. Oh, not there. So let's pull up the other. Where are you? Azure Storage. Let's see what test case says. I don't know if this is really going to tell us anything different because this is the trigger part that's not working. I have to pull up my other laptop. See what was not committed. Storage test. Q test. Yeah, this just uses the manual, so that won't work with the functions. So you can't help me right now. So the problem is with the string. So let's just verify that it works with the string, and let's just do this, and then this, and then we can see the string, and we can figure out the serialization next episode. So I'm going to save that. Let's stop you. Go back to the Storage Explorer. Let's move this message. And let's put it in the create queue. If we look at the create queue, we should see it there. Now let's debug this. Hopefully these error messages go away, but then I have to figure out the serialization part. No, there's illegal characters in there. Oh well. Have to see what messages we put on there. Oh, I think I know what it is. I think it's the way we actually wrote the message on the queue. Let me just double check that. We will figure it out at the next time. So tune in tomorrow around 6:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Daylight Time, same bat channel, same bat stream. Have an awesome night.